The amount of Islamophobia that we have seen on the streets of London.
Where's that?
So central London has now become a complete no-go zone for Jews. How are we allowing this to happen in 2024? Let's have a look at Douglas Murray and his panel on TalkTV discussing this.
But I think we have to be really careful at demonising everybody from a certain community in with those who hold those extremist views. And that is what has unfortunately been happening in the United Kingdom, that everybody that happens to be of the Muslim faith has now been tarred with that brush.
Do you think they have?
I really do. Well, you've seen it. The amount of Islamophobia that we have seen on the streets of London.
Where's that?
Yeah, good question, Douglas. Where is that? Now, first of all, I'm not going to use the word Islamophobia because it's a stupid word. But if we use the word anti-Muslim hate instead, I'm not saying that there's none of it. There are definitely cases where this happens. But let's address the elephant in the room. Anti-Semitism. This is the serious problem here. The far right and anti-Muslim hatred are the smallest of our problems here. But everyone feels the need to be nice and identify both anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hatred as if there's the same amount of both of them. Complete rubbish.
Outside the Houses of Parliament.
The thing is Islam.
I've seen.
I think you mean
I have seen other places of worship across the country need to look at extremism, and they need to be a little bit more savvy as to what is happening within those communities and to call it out and be absolutely be bolder at calling it out.
It's strange. Some of this discussion feels like just a time warp to me. I mean, we had this discussion about fundamental British values 20 years ago.
And when Blair said it.
When Blair said in 2005, the rules of the game are going to change.
Yeah.
Gordon Brown, I remember him, spent a lot of time, actually, to his credit, talking about, fundamental British values and this sort of thing. How are we 15, 20 years later and we're still having this discussion?
Because
It's a shame, really, that after all this time of people warning and warning about people in this country who don't adhere to British values, about people warning about Islamist extremism on the rise, it's just gone ignored. And now we're at a point where we're told that the terror threat in Britain is higher than it's ever been since 9/11, yet still people are just talking about, the far-right extremists. No. 90% of people on the terror watch list are Islamist extremists, and we do nothing about it.
ignored it because we've allowed ourselves to be stifled by people that are unwilling to or not mature enough to actually to engage in this conversation. We've allowed ourselves to be silenced by people that are wanting to shout racism or discrimination or whatever at every corner. The reality is we all have to live together and we all have to have a set of values and ideals and an identity that bind us together. If you are unwilling to take part in that discussion, you need to leave. And we should have said that for a very long time. I don't care where you go, but go where you are more comfortable, because you cannot live in British society and not buy into certain British values. But, that wasn't. It never got to the bit where you need to leave.
Well, Esther, I mean, look, this country has spent years now trying to keep one girl who joined ISIS out of the country, and it has taken up endless hours in the courts and so on. And that's somebody who joined ISIS.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know that she says she sort of didn't know what she was getting into, and she thought she was going on a holiday and didn't. I mean, we can all accidentally join a head-hacking jihadist group accidentally. I'm sure it's happened to all of us. Mm-hmm. But I mean,
exactly. So, Shamima Begum, we've been arguing for years and years and years, a load of money and time spent on legislation, just trying to keep this one girl out the country, this one girl who joined ISIS, trying to keep her out the country. If we're struggling to keep her out the country, then how are we going to get all the other extremists out the country? Now, you might say, the point that Esther's made here, that if you don't adhere to British values, then get out the country. You might say that that's intolerant, that we should tolerate people who don't share the same views as us. And, of course, a part of living in democracy means that we want to be tolerant of different points of view. But there comes a point where that is untenable. I think that Karl Popper's paradox of tolerance is sadly coming true, where if you tolerate the intolerant, tolerance destroys itself. We can only tolerate other points of view when it's coming from people who are actually willing to tolerate us, not people who want us to be silenced and killed.
That's with an absolutely clear-cut case. I mean, what we're talking about here is people who seem not to sign up to British values, as we now call them, and much more. But what on earth do you do with them?
But the problem is that we can't have a conversation about it.
Well, we're having it now.
The three of us are having a balanced conversation. Unfortunately, you take that outside, you take it into Parliament, it goes horribly wrong.
Yeah.
That kind of conversation goes
Okay,
bad.
now why is that? But hang on, but why is that?
Why is that? I think there is a lot of pressure behind some MPs. I think that has a part to play in it. I think also...
Hold on, you're playing this down quite a bit here. A lot of pressure. Okay, how about we rephrase that as a lot of threats, a lot of death threats, a lot of MPs' offices being vandalised, an MP having to announce that he's standing down because of death threats. Let's say it how it is, shall we?
The sheer subject. People want to be very careful with what they say, so they end up saying nothing at all, with a lot of words to say nothing, as we've seen from a lot of politicians. But also nobody wants to call out the behaviour, extremist behaviour on both sides of the spectrum.
Well, where are the both sides of that, though? Because I hear this a lot. I heard this in the Rishi Sunak speech last Friday. He kept on talking about both sides of it. Look, we all recognise that if it is the case, as even the counter-extremism advisor to the government has said, that London is basically a no-go zone for Jews, well, we know what's driving that. It's a hardcore, very, very driven Muslim ideologues on the streets, some of whom openly support Hamas, which is a proscribed terrorist group. And then, as you say, there are the people coming along with them, some of whom don't know what they're chanting. And one video of one of the guys the other day at the protests was this white, sort of sandal-wearing young guy, and somebody said, "What does your banner mean?" And he said, "Oh, I don't really know." And they said, "Well, where did you get it?" "Oh, that guy over there gave it to me." I was like, "What? Who goes down the street with a banner that just some other bloke's given them?" Anyhow, those people aside, nevertheless, you said both sides of it. Where is the other side of that? Like, where is this kind of far-right thing? I'm not saying it doesn't exist. We know that there are pockets of, like, there are like very nasty people in the woodshed. We know that with the murder of Joe Cox. But there's no organised movement on the other side.
Yeah, exactly, right? So Rishi Sunak felt the need when he stood outside on the steps of Downing Street to bring up the far right just as much as he brought up Islamist extremists, so that he could seem fair and he could seem PC. He's being inclusive, bringing in everybody. But then when he had to bring up examples of the far right, the only example he could bring up was Nick Griffin, who's not been around for donkey's years. Because these supposed far right extremists, they're just not around. As Douglas says, there are a few nasty individuals, but there's no kind of big organised group like there is with these Islamist extremists that are actually the real threat on the streets of Britain today.
Is there?
The thing is, they're so small, they're negligible. There are both sides, but the reality is, if you give equal weight to the kind of the other side when we don't necessarily see it on the data, unless you're like following bots on Twitter, it makes it seem like you're unserious about tackling the issue. And the politicians want to seem balanced. They want to seem like, oh yes, we're saying we're wagging our finger at all the naughty kids, right? But the thing is, we know the writing on the wall. We can actually see in our daily lives.
There we go. So it is absolutely right there what Esther has said. It just makes politicians look weak when they keep on bringing up the far right rather than actually just saying it how it is and admitting that the real threat that we're facing is Islamist extremism. Stop bringing up the far right. Rishi Sunak, for a moment, looked strong at that press conference. It looked like he's finally standing up, taking a stand against this madness that's going on the streets of Britain and threatening our democracy. But then when he started bringing up the far right, he just lost all credibility. And as far as from what I can see online, from how people are responding to what Rishi said, everyone just thinks it looked incredibly weak and pathetic and essentially too little, too late. I'm Chloe Dobbs, and if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.
Have you got what it takes to be a reasoned presenter? Well, send us a short clip of yourself to join@reasoned.uk, and we might be seeing you on this very channel very soon indeed.